Oh shit!
Why are you running?
These really fat legs here, a lot more extreme. Generate the number 3. The study of precognition has always been interesting to me, but not for the reason you might think. Like anyone, I had 1 or 2 surprisingly impressive dodgeball performances in gym class, and each time this little brain worm would creep in and be like, could it be? Do I have... In 2011, a study was published that claimed to have found real proof of precognition. Experimental subjects were measured to make a choice to avoid negative stimuli before it was randomly determined whether or not the choice they made would result in a negative stimulus. Now, they made the avoidant choice 51% of the time, and yes, before you ask, they did do a statistical analysis, they analyzed the p-values and all that stuff, and it was statistically significant. Can we stop with the car alarm, please? I'm in the middle of something here. There's suspense and tension, I hope. There was another experiment in this study, by the way, that measured a subject's capability for predicting whether or not an image was, hold on, I don't usually talk about this. I believe the YouTube term is corn. Subjects could perform that extrasensory prediction with 53% accuracy. And again, it was a statistically significant result. What's going on, everybody? If you're new here, my name is Will and I make videos every 2 weeks. Actually, it's every week now, detailing inventions that I'm making for my company, Dragline Dynamics. And I provide as much niche scientific education as I can along the way. Today we'll be continuing our experiments on Charlotte. That is, which model of Charlotte is the better model? Big Charlotte, as you can see right here, or Little Charlotte. So if you missed the first part of that, go ahead and watch it right here. Click the card, should be like up there, I think. So let's talk about experiments. I'm not a statistician. As a matter of fact, it's always been one of my weak points. I've taken exactly 1 statistics class in my entire life, and it was in my second to last year of grad school. I have no idea how that happened, but it just did. Now, that class was about experimental design. I want to convey the basics, but I'm going to need the statisticians to step up in the comments. So all measurements have some random noise. If you measure the same parameter 3 times, you'll get slightly different values. That's just nature. Measurements are random variables. Now imagine all the measurements of a thing you could ever hope to do. That's the population of measurements of that thing. And that population is typically expected to be distributed something like this. A Gaussian distribution is centered at the mean of all of the measurements of the population, and most of the measurements occur near the mean, with a few measurements being farther from the mean. The mean is typically taken as the true value. The spread of this distribution, how wide it is measured using the standard deviation, sigma. Basically, 68% of all measurements will randomly fall within 1 standard deviation from the mean, and 95% of measurements will randomly fall within 2 standard deviations from the mean. A number of measurements, or n of 3, is pretty typical for measuring engineering results that shouldn't have a lot of noise, like I'm going to do in this video. But that means we don't have the whole population of measurements, we just have 3 samples. So we calculate the sample mean and sample standard deviation. And those equations look like this. In an experiment, we're looking for effects. For me, I'm looking at the effect of using Big Charlotte as opposed to Little Charlotte. That's our independent variable. What I'm asking is, how does this variable affect the speed or strength or any number of things of our robot? That's our dependent variable. To say whether or not there is some effect is to reject what's called the null hypothesis, which is that there's no effect, i.e., big and little have the same speed or strength or any number of things. In order to reject the null hypothesis, you have to show that there is very low probability that your sample measurements for big and little belong to the same Gaussian distribution. The p-value is the probability that you will get the data that you got, or something even more extreme, if the null hypothesis were true. You want to go for a p-value of less than 0.05. That's saying you only have a 5% chance that your data would happen if the null hypothesis were true. The p-value is not the probability the null hypothesis is true outright. That is a completely different thing and a very common misconception. So to educate a bit, we're going to be doing simple, what's called student t-testing. because that's pretty much all I can recall from the class. This draws from an existing probability distribution, the t distribution, to give a critical t value that corresponds to a p-value of 0.05 for your specific experiment parameters, represented by degrees of freedom. You then calculate your own observed t-value like so, and if it's greater than your critical, you have a p-value of 0.05 or less. So let's get to testing. Who's better, Big Charlotte or Little Charlotte? So we've done a lot of work on Charlotte so far, and you might have seen it from simulation to modeling to various prototypes. Now, before we get to testing, there were a couple things that I just had to get off my chest. Don't shoot the engineer. It's not time to ship the product yet. So if you look at Little Charlotte in her previous iteration, you've got these really fat legs here, and that caused a problem that I saw last time that I brought up of these legs rubbing against each other as Charlotte walks. And I pretty much liked everything else about these thicker legs. The other thing I kind of didn't like is that they were actually glued together. And I don't like to use glue as a principle, but I couldn't think of an easier way to assemble this kind of part that has both flexible and rigid materials in it. The adhesive also led to these really inconvenient kind of gaps between the flexible part and the rigid part that I was not a big fan of at all. But I came up with a redesign of these legs that are much thinner, and so they probably won't rub against each other. You can see before the flexible part of these legs here, which I like to call the fleshy or meaty part. It was printed with like a thicker, constant cross section, but I came up with a different version that tapers from the hip down to the foot. Now, while I was redesigning this leg, I realized that I could also do away with the adhesive and go for a snap or press fit version of this assembly. It took some time, but eventually I settled on something that worked pretty well. This guy really pulled his weight this week. Precise 3D printing parameters were super necessary to get this to work. New thinner legs, they don't bump into each other during the gait cycle, and maybe it'll provide Charlotte with some more agility as well. And it's not just Little Charlotte that's getting upgrades. You might remember in the last time you saw Big Charlotte walk, she had this crazy kind of back and forth rocking motion. I think that had something to do with the fact that the battery was mounted all the way sort of towards the front. Or towards the back of this design. And so I've solved that by mounting the battery more in the center now, so that should be taken care of. Now you're probably also wondering, what is this string that's running through the center of Charlotte here? And that is my basic guiding system for the straight line walking speed test. I don't have a control system on Charlotte yet. I don't have a remote controller yet, so she just needs something to kind of slightly have her direction constrained when she's walking. I've come up with this simple system. It might do some adverse things like give her a little bit of extra lift or press down on her a little bit, but that's basically just what I have to deal with now. So just to quickly illustrate a hopefully proper way to do experiments. Again, statisticians, please roast me to hell. We're going to be testing, what did I decide? 3 simple attributes of Charlotte today. And we're going to be trying to do that in a very controlled way. I've got some other plans as well for things like agility and carrying capacity and the things that I think really matter, but I'm going to need a more thorough plan for those types of things because they are more complicated, and I'm going to need like a radio control system for Charlotte as well. And right now, she doesn't have that, but it's coming, I promise. Like I've been looking at some of the outdoor trails here, and I'd be really excited to do like a final comprehensive test to see how well she does just in nature's terrain. And we can measure many different attributes while she's walking these trails. I think that would be really cool. One thing we definitely have to do is make sure our battery is charged. All right, so here we have our experimental design for Charlotte's speed measurement. And so we've got Big Charlotte here mounted on that cable. One end of this cable, we've got a weight. Another end of the cable, we've got a force gauge so I can control the tension in the rope. And we're gonna set it to be at just 5 ounces. It doesn't impart that many forces vertically or horizontally, but it's just gonna hopefully keep Charlotte relatively on track. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and collect our measurements here. We'll get 3 measurements for Charlotte's time, 3 measurements for the distance between the start and the finish, and that will make our 3 measurements for Charlotte's speed. Now it's little Charlotte's turn. 8, 9. Oh shit! So next we've got comparing the weight of these 2 robots, and that's pretty easy. We've just got the same force gauge here. Now, what's important for this is I actually want to measure everything except the battery and the electronics, because this is actually the product that I'll be selling. So I want to know the weight of just the locomotion platform. That's just the legs and the motors. Not even registering? Is it that light? Come on. I guess we've got to use an actual spring scale here. 0. Okay, the last thing I wanted to measure is the no load power consumption. So that's not during walking. I'm just going to turn it upside down, and I've got a random number generator here. So what I'm going to do is flip this on so that the legs start moving and I can observe the current and voltage on my power supply. And I'll just keep generating a number. As soon as I generate the number 3 randomly, I'm going to look at the current dial, and that's going to be the current that I select for measurement. And I'm going to do that 3 times just to get an even spread. So in the end, what happened with this precognition experiment? What was really going on here? One of the things at play is the way that we form hypotheses. Experiments can be either exploratory or they can be confirmatory. Exploratory studies are very common in psychology, which is the field that this paper came from. You'll try to find correlations between environmental factors and human behavior. And so you might come up with a bunch of different experiments of, does A cause B? The A might be any number of things and the B might be any number of things, and you'll do a bunch of these experiments. The problem is that these experiments, at random, some of them might yield more positive correlations than others. So if you just look at that one experiment in isolation without the other experiments and you just analyze that statistically, it looks significant. We all agree that a coin should land on heads 50% of the time and tails the other 50% of the time, right? We all agree, hopefully, that that is roughly the case. Now, if I come up with a hypothesis that says the color of a coin actually affects its fairness, affects how often it lands on heads and how often it lands on tails. So if I were to do an exploratory study, I would basically say, I need to find out which color affects the fairness most strongly. So what I would do is I would take, let's say, 10 different colors of coins, and I'd flip each 10 different times, and I'd look at the results. And what I find, if I do this at random, is that there is a color that gives me a pretty striking bias towards heads. And then completely in a non-malicious way, just from my, subconscious processing, I then take that color coins study, the 10 flips of that color in isolation, and I say, holy cow, this color coin is more than 50% likely to fall on heads. So this begs the question, right? Is the hypothesis that I made in the first place, that the color of a coin can affect its fairness, is that a valid hypothesis to be making? So what probably happened with the precognition study is that there were many different studies that were done that were not published, that didn't show a correlation. So what they did is they find these 2 studies, for example, that people can have precognition for negative stimuli, or that people can have precognition for corn, and then they come up with hypotheses as a result of those results. Whereas it could have been anything. People have precognition for any stimuli, for example. It could be people have precognition for pictures of Christmas lights or something. You know, when it comes to the color of a coin affecting its fairness, or when it comes to predicting corn from the future, we as scientists need to remember we need to restrict our hypotheses to things that have a proposed method of action. For instance, how does information travel backwards in time? That violates causality, it violates the laws of physics, and yet a hypothesis was made. There is no way that a color of a coin can affect its fairness. So why would I make that hypothesis to begin with? I'm sure you're watching this, it seems like a crazy hypothesis. The result of this 2011 study was basically that we realized that we can make data say pretty much anything we want to say. And it showed us that we need to be a little bit more careful with the way that we analyze our data. So let's take a look at the Charlotte results. How are Big and Little doing? So the results we got basically show couple interesting things. First of all, we get very strong correlations according to the student t-test for everything that we measured. So first of all, for speed, we find that the Little Charlotte is about 3 times faster than Big Charlotte, and that's pretty repeatable. For the weight, we actually find that Big Charlotte is a little bit heavier than Little Charlotte, and that's not what I was expecting. And finally, for the no-load power consumption, we find that Little Charlotte consumes almost twice as much power as Big Charlotte, which is not great, but it is an interesting result. And in bar graph form, here's what we got here. So you can see the error bars are pretty small. That means that the 3 samples that we got for each measurement are in pretty good agreement with each other. And I think 100 millimeters per second is just about what we predicted from our model for Little Charlotte that we developed back in August. So that's pretty cool. Though I think because of friction and everything, the no load power is a lot more extreme in reality than we expected. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this look into the replication crisis and you enjoyed a little bit more Charlotte progress. I promise next time we're going to get to those more exciting SpiderBot experiments and hopefully have Charlotte walking on some super uneven terrain to see how she does. We're really going to put her to the test. And I also want to thank Mark Chrysler and the Constant podcast. They did an episode about the study of precognition throughout human history, which culminated in the story of the 2011 study about time-traveling corn. And it's one of my favorite episodes of that podcast, and that's one of my favorite podcasts, so please do go check out the Constant podcast. You can get it anywhere you want. I'm not sponsored. I'm just saying it's a brilliant podcast. I'm getting a premonition. It's that you will like and subscribe. Stay safe, stay amazing, and I'll see you guys in about a week. I want to take a quick minute at the end here to shout out my friend Garrett, aka the Blood Spider. You may remember us battling it out back in the pandemic years. He's got a Kickstarter up for his creative project, the Blood Spider YouTube series. The link to that is in the description. He and I are on very different creative paths right now, but I just want to give him a shout out. And if you're not cool with the path that I'm on, maybe you'll be cool with the path that he's on, and he could really use your support.